We're not talking about the best of them. We're just talking about the rest of them.
Not the worst parts, but the best parts. And the best parts we have. The best of the rest.
Hello, and welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at movies that were poorly received upon release and challenge ourselves. I just looked at the sound waves of me making that noise. Sorry about your ears, folks. Challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. It's Mars month, and this week we are talking the 1996 film Mars Attacks. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by my humanoid co-host, Andrew Williams. Are you ready for this one, Andrew?
I am quite ready, especially after that tremendous intro of yours.
It wasn't a recording I was playing off a translator, Andrew. Those were these vocal cords producing those sounds.
I'm just saying, Frank Welker, watch out.
Oh man, Mars Attacks. I have seen this movie a number of times, I think, but it had been a long time. Probably over 20 years since I watched it beginning to end. Maybe I've seen some clips otherwise, but I've always liked this movie. I think I might have even more appreciation for it watching it now. So I'm excited to get into it, excited to talk about it. Andrew, what is your history with this movie? You had to have seen it before this week, right?
Absolutely, yeah. This was everywhere when I was a kid. It's pretty much, your parents had HBO. It was on 6 times a day, pretty much. It was everywhere. I don't know if I saw it in theaters. I know we had it, whether it was taped off TV or whatever. But yeah, watched it a lot as a kid. Was surprised at what was still in my brain, and was also surprised at what I had completely forgotten about. So
100%. That's such a great way to describe this movie. There are certain small details that are burned into my brain, but I could not have told you Jack Black was in this movie before watching it again.
Like maybe if you told me that, like if you told me he was in it, I might have eventually remembered who he was. But yeah, like when he showed up, I was like, oh, right. Yeah. This movie is weirdly stacked. So yeah, that was definitely my experience now, especially was like, I definitely remembered some stuff, and other things I was like, whoa.
The theme this month on Best of the Rest is Mars. Every week we're talking about a movie about Mars, or in this case, Martians. There's actually a number of them to choose from. We got 4 coming your way this month, and it starts here with Mars Attacks, the movie that was released December 13th of 1996. This was like a holiday release. I do not understand this, Andrew.
The skeletons are red and green, Chris.
That is true. It's made on a budget of $70 million at the box office. Brings in $101.4 million. It is a flop at the box office. Critically, kind of split. It holds just a 56% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. That is rotten on their scale. And I was genuinely shocked to see that the audience score is lower. We've said it many times. It's rare for the audiences to score a movie lower in any genre on Rotten Tomatoes. But something like this, campy, fun, Tim Burton, I would expect it to have very vocal defenders, and maybe it does, but they don't drown out the haters, as it were. 53% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
I was surprised by that. I did not expect to find that the audience score was even like not immensely higher, but like at least in the fresh range. To see that this is still pretty dividedly down the middle, I was surprised by that. I figured this is that one that like kind of a cult favorite by now. Like I figured, like I feel like
100%.
everybody my age knew Mars Attacks and liked it growing up. So I was definitely surprised by that.
I always who are these people? Like when it's a movie that like
You've seen this? You heard about this? Who are these people?
This is before Rotten Tomatoes exists, which means, I don't know, when a movie comes out now and the audience score is lower, it's not as shocking. There's your brigading and what have you. I'm not even talking about that, but just the idea of a modern moviegoer watching a movie and then heading to the internet to leave their thoughts on it makes a lot of sense to me, whether they liked it or not. But the idea that, like, in the modern age, someone is going back and watching Mars Attacks and feels so strongly that they got to log in and leave a negative review of this film, I guess I can't judge them too harshly because we're recording a podcast about it. It's not that different, I guess, but
I guess not.
I don't know. Something about it just seems strange to me that's how you prioritize your time.
Hey, you see people with their letterboxed, I guess there are people out there doing it. Who knows?
The movie is written by Jonathan Gems. Now, Jonathan does not have a lot of Hollywood credits to their name, but they have worked with Tim Burton quite a bit. Seems to be kind of in his inner circle, at least during this portion of his career. Kind of a ghostwriter on some projects, and has like a cachet of scripts that Burton never got around to producing. This was one of them. Obviously, he got around to making it, but he wrote a lot of other scripts for him that, as of now, have not been made, including one that I've heard a lot about, which is the Beetlejuice sequel. Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian. That was the direction that they had for that sequel. It just, again, the idea of someone like creating Beetlejuice. I'm like, where do we go with this character next? Tropical Vacation, of course.
I'm just always reminded of what Kevin Smith said when he heard that movie was in like when they had a script for it, and he was like, "Didn't we say all we needed to say with the first Beetlejuice? Must we go tropical?"
This time it's tropical. Yeah, I don't know. I still hear rumblings that the sequel is happening. It seems
it is
more.
They're shooting it.
Okay, Andrew, I'll believe it when I see it. Okay, when I see it, I mean I'm sitting in a theater and I see the movie on my screen. Okay, I was told we'd be getting a Batgirl movie too, and that isn't going to happen.
That is true. You got me there. You got me there. I have no response. Everything.
I'm guessing they don't go to Hawaii in the new one, though. I think
I would expect there might be a joke just because you kind of got to have some fun at the expense. But yeah.
Does he wear a Hawaiian shirt in the cartoon? I feel like he.
I'm sure he does. I'm absolutely certain he does.
I have a visual of that in my head right now.
I did find it interesting, like you said, looking at the work of Jonathan Gems. Now, it does go without saying that Jonathan Gems is the only credited screenwriter on this final film. But there are a great number of other people who end up having a piece of this, which includes, what are their names? Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski. Because, I don't know. I apologize. They are a group of screenwriters that also had a history with Tim Burton, notably writing Ed Wood, but also wrote such things as Problem Child, The People vs. Larry Flint, Man on the Moon, Agent Cody Banks, 1408, quite a lot of different writing credits between the two of them, but also a previous working relationship with Tim Burton. And Jonathan Gems, to his credit, also says he kind of implies that Tim Burton helped write much of the movie, but ended up not being credited as well. So we have a lot of different people, but if Jonathan Gems is the one who ultimately gets final credit, that means that most of that final script is from stuff that he'd written before. So, and he leaves the project and comes back. And it was...
It does seem like he was asked strongly to leave before coming back. And it was all about budget concerns. It was like, look, we're giving you guys, I think it started like 50 million and ballooned to 80 million, what they're allowed to use. But he was turning in scripts that were 100 million plus. And like, we can't you don't have the budget for this. So he trims out a lot of the final act, a lot of the destruction. They pare it down, and there's a scene that they wanted to cut. It's like the opening scene of the movie with the cows running down the street on fire, and Jonathan Jim's like, no, I can't cut that. I can't do it. I can't think of
I can't do
my
it.
mind can't come up with anything else that could possibly open this movie. I'm putting my foot down. We have to have burning cows. And they said, all right, we'll hire someone else to write the movie. And then Jonathan Jims comes back to it. And as we all see now, those burning cows made it into the film.
Yeah, which, to be fair, I'd forgotten about, and is a very, very striking opening.
Striking opening, and the farmer saying it smells like barbecue. It's pretty funny. That's a pretty funny joke.
So anyway, Jems apparently wrote 12 drafts of the script, and apparently over 90% of the finished shooting script. So that's why he eventually gets sole credit for it. He also writes the novelization, which is where he says in the dedication that Burton co-wrote it and didn't ask for a credit. And so, yeah, but ultimately a few different people having a piece of this, but Jonathan Jems is also apparently the one who kind of went to Tim Burton and said, hey, I think we should do this. And, he's definitely the guy who kind of shepherded it into existence. So he may not have gotten a lot of stuff made with Burton, but this is one where it did get to the finish line. I may have to seek out that novelization, see if it's any different.
As we've said a number of times already, this movie is directed by Tim Burton. Andrew, are you ready for the coldest take imaginable? I mean, it's like ice cold, like handle with care. Are you ready?
Sure.
I like Tim Burton's movies from the late 80s and 90s.
What?
And his movies from the last couple of decades haven't been very exciting to me.
Hold on. Hold on. Hold on.
Yeah,
We're going to back this up. You're going to say that the man responsible for such things as Planet of the Apes, Dark Shadows, Alice in Wonderland, and Dumbo used to be more interesting.
I think that's what I'm saying, yeah. His movies, anyway. I don't want to put too much on the man himself. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's. You ready for another cold take? Whenever he uses practical effects, it's more exciting than when it's CGI. Although this is a CGI heavy movie, I should say, to be fair. And I think it works here maybe better than it does in any of his 2000s post CG heavy movies.
Big Fish wasn't bad.
I usually say Big Fish. Big Fish kind of like ends his run, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then Sweeney Todd, I do like. Sweeney Todd is kind of, I think, sandwiched by movies that don't excite me very much. But I think Sweeney Todd's the last one, like, I really, really like.
Because it's big, because it's his early run, obviously, like Pee-wee, Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands, Batman Again, Ed Wood, Mars Attacks, Sleepy Hollow. Like, through all of that, that's still pretty classic Tim Burton. Then he does Planet of the Apes, which is bad for everyone, to be fair. #PP.
I think I haven't seen it in a long time. I'm sure we will eventually cover it on this podcast. I think it looks good. Like, I think it's the writing there and maybe the Mark Wahlberg of it all. But
so then
I think he still has his visual style there.
We'll have to, one day. Movies where you think it's a different planet, but it turns out to be Earth, and it's just all Planet of the Apes sequels. But there are a great many of them. Then it's Big Fish, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but I know it's made a ton of money and people seem to like it. Then it's Corpse Bride, which also pretty well liked, near as I can tell. And then it's Sweeney Todd. And I think it's post Sweeney Todd where that's where it starts getting a lot more uneven. Because after Sweeney Todd, it's Alice in Wonderland, Dark Shadows, Frankenweenie, which again, to be fair, I heard generally people really liked. And then
I've
Big
only
Eyes.
seen the short. I never saw the.
And Big Eyes, I think
Frankenweenie.
you're a fan of.
You put me on. It's okay. I'll say that.
Okay.
You fit me on the spot. It's
fine.
Okay. It was like it felt like a fresh of breath air when that came out, because it was like, oh, he's kind of just stripping everything away and just telling a story.
Kind of doing like an Ed Wood thing again, like just
yeah,
kind of
stripped too much away in my opinion, but it's fine.
And then the last two is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children and Dumbo, both of which were, I think the responses were aggressively average. So, yeah, I think saying that the first 15 years of Burton's career versus the last 20, I don't think it's a hot take to say that the early stuff is better.
Hey, I didn't say it was. Ice cold, I believe is what I said. Check the tape.
Ice cold. Yes, you are very
Hashtag
correct
PP,
in saying,
of course.
Hashtag PP. The coldest of possible takes. The only thing that could be colder is if I can't think of a Tim Burton take that would be colder than that. Pee-wee's Big Adventure is his best movie. Is that a cold take or is that hot? I don't know.
Wait, is that what you think?
No.
Oh,
I'm just saying.
Okay.
Would
You're
that
trying
be
to
a
think
cold?
of.
Would that be a cold take?
That would be a hot take, I think.
Would?
I
Okay.
love Pee-wee, but like his best movie, I think it's got to be like probably Batman and Edward Scissorhands battling it out. Like if you were to poll, your favorite might be different. I get it, but I think those two would come out at the top of the list.
Although his best movie's Ed Wood, right?
Maybe I hate to, because it's like that's like his serious movie in this early period, and it's different and is really good. I think it's pretty ambitious to commit to the black and white thing. I don't know. If you were gun to head, I would say Andrew, put the gun down. But I would say Edward Scissorhands. I think
That's a good joke, Chris.
Because...
I have to steal that from you. Gun to my head. First off, put the gun down. But
it's not that serious. It's just Tim Burton movies. Chill,
Edward
man.
Scissorhands, I think, is definitely like obviously for me, it's Batman. Like that's the Tim Burton I watch the most often is Batman. So like I have no qualms about saying that Batman's my favorite. But I also realize that that's like the least Tim Burton of some of Tim Burton's movies. Like
you compare it to some of that later stuff we said though. It's very Tim Burton though.
That's true. That's true.
But Batman Returns gets very. Man,
Batman Returns is about as Tim Burton-y as it gets.
I love that movie. I don't know if there's any other movie covered on this podcast that my love for it jumped higher than when we've revisited Batman Returns. I love that movie.
That movie is wild in all the best ways.
Edward Scissorhands, I love. It's so unique. It's very Tim Burton. No one else could have made that movie. It's great. That's I'm gonna lock that in as my number one right here on the podcast.
All right. Because you folks demanded it. Moving on.
Put the gun down, everybody. I said it. Let's talk about it though. We're ready for Mars Attacks. Although while we are like running through his filmography, I just want to say this comes at an interesting time. I think I was telling you this a little bit before we hit record. Like just visually looking at this movie, just the palette. It's very bright, very colorful. Even the action scenes, most of them are during the day until like the very end. The aliens are obviously very bright and vibrant. Like other than Pee-wee, which is a little bit of an outlier because that's like his first step in Hollywood. Like once he gets control of his movies, they get very dark. His color palette's very dark, and it's just visually a dark movie. This one really pops in this kind of string of Burton movies, which I just think is pretty interesting.
It is, and it doesn't really look like you said, outside something like Pee-wee, it doesn't really look like anything else he's done. It's like there's night scenes, but they're like in Vegas where everything's brightly lit by the strip and stuff. It's very, it's almost the anti-Burton, if you will.
Yeah, and like one of his kind of signatures is like his influence on the art direction of the project. You always get, the trees that bend at the very top. You always get these very distinct looks, characters that are clearly started as a Tim Burton sketch. They make their way into like all of his movies up till now. And this design is all about its source material, which I don't think we've said yet, is based on trading cards created by Topps, which is wild. We probably should have saved this movie for when we do a month of movies based on trading cards. We could have done this and Garbage Pail Kids and just done 2 episodes on each of them.
Find that 1 month that somehow only has 2 Tuesdays.
Right.
I was very interested in this because I actually went and found an online post that had all 55 cards of that original set. Now, it's easy to be like, they were trading cards. How does that work? But the trading cards were numbered 1 to 55. 55 is just a checklist. So 1 to 54 told an actual story. And the idea of you as the collector was to get all 54 cards to get the complete story. I didn't even realize this was a thing, Chris. I thought
Same.
sports cards. That's
Same.
all what I thought they were.
100%.
Or at most I thought it was just like pinups, and that was it. The idea of
I
telling
used to collect
a story.
X-Men cards, but it was just characters on a card. It wasn't telling a story.
Right.
So same. I never thought of an original IP on a trading card. Sounds so alien to me. But telling a story is just not something I had considered.
Right. And so when I went back and was like, oh, they were cards, and apparently the original cards, the gore that they seen, because you and I looked at them, there's some wild stuff in them. There was implied sexual content. It did lead to the cards getting pulled, and they halted production. And certain cards apparently can go for thousands of dollars now of that original run. So they did they've done several reprints of the original cards so that you can get them now in a much more cost-effective way. But yeah, the idea of a story over trading cards was so wild to me. One of the things that happened was Wally Wood, who was a relatively obscure comic book artist. He had done a cover for a magazine called Weird Science, and somebody saw that and was like, they were inspired to create this line of Mars Attacks cards. And it was Len Brown and Woody Gelman. And Wellman and Brown created the story, and then Brown wrote the copy, and then they enlisted Wally Wood himself to flesh out sketches based off of some ideas that they had. And then they got Bob Powell to finish them, and then Norman Saunders to paint them. So Wally Wood draws all of these. Now, Wally Wood is a name that you probably don't know off the top of your head. He was a comic book writer, artist, did a variety of different things for EC Comics, Weird Science, Weird Fantasy. Did work with Mad Magazine for the first 10 plus years of its creation, and also did a lot of stuff with Marvel and DC throughout the years. His biggest possible contribution to comics is Daredevil's red costume. He is responsible for taking his costume from the yellow-red combination to the just straight red suit. He was the first person to draw
wild, that. Not trying to take anything away from him by any means, but how do you create a character called Daredevil and you don't think to make his costume red? I'm glad he came along and did that, but yellow, that should be his defining color.
Right. It's a real Robin thing. But and then he did a comic later called Thunder Agents in the late 60s that I'm actually a big fan of. Either way, he's probably one of the more unknown characters within comic books history, especially within the Silver Age. He faced a variety of issues throughout his life that ultimately led to him committing suicide in the early 80s. He wasn't really happy with how he did things throughout his career, wished he had done things that put him in a little bit more control. But either way, he's just one of those unsung creators that nobody talks about. You hear about Silver Age comic book creators. People talk about Jack Kirby for very good, very good reasons. They talk about Stan Lee. They even talk about some of the DC guys like Kurt Swan. Guys like Gardner Fox. Gardner Fox is another creator I really, really like because he's responsible for a lot of that classic DC Silver Age stuff. But Wally Wood was a fantastic artist who was everywhere. I mean, like I said, he did these trading cards for Mars Attacks, but also was doing comic books, did all sorts of different things throughout his life, also worked as an inker, worked a lot for EC Comics in the 50s before they kind of ran into trouble with the creation of the Comics Code. Just did whatever he really wanted. And it's a shame how his life turned out, but I think he left a legacy that's unfortunately rather unknown, but immense all the same.
R.A.P. to Wally. This one's for you. Let's do it, Andrew. Let's jump into this movie. Talk about everything it does well, everything we like about Mars Attacks. You ready?
Yep.
When Earth is invaded by aliens and flying saucers, the U.S. government arranges to meet with the Martians and establish contact. During the meeting, the Martians vaporize all of the humans. Hoping that this was simply a misunderstanding, the United States government once again arranges a meeting with the green creatures, and once again every human is vaporized. When their killing sprees spill into the cities, it becomes clear that they must be eliminated before they kill every last human on Earth. It is a simple, straightforward premise, but sort of the magic of this movie and the real driving narrative is the fact that we have 4 or 5 different stories going on at the same time and this huge eclectic cast of characters that we follow throughout. Pretty interesting structure. It's one of those things you look at, a movie based on trading cards, and even if there is a loose narrative throughout there, you still got to flesh it out quite a bit to make it a feature-length film. So they took some cues from classic disaster movies and how they approached sort of the large cast formula, worked that in, and I think it was just a really smart way to go about it.
I think so. Obviously, like we've already mentioned, this cast is stacked, and apparently at one point the cast was even more immense. They said at one point it was 60 characters. They whittled it down to a lean 23 characters. Just because that's so much simpler.
Just 23 people to follow.
But yeah, they talked about this. Burton himself kind of saw this as a chance to pay homage to the films of Ed Wood. Stuff like Plan 9 from Outer Space. And then even just looking to other science fiction B movies, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Invaders from Mars, The War of the Worlds, Earth versus the Flying Saucers, just looking to that classic science fiction era and kind of creating something that would work not just as its own film, but to homage a lot of the influences on Burton's work himself. So,
well, we're going to jump into it, everything we like about it. But first, of course, we are going to start with the cast, starting with the high point, the best casting and best performance of the film, because every episode we recognize one person who goes above and beyond the call of duty, that they actually elevate the quality of the entire film with their performance, and we recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. So, Andrew, go ahead and kick us off. Who is getting your Mark Strong Award for Mars Attacks?
I got to go straight to the top. I'm going with Jack Nicholson, who plays not just our U.S. President James Dale, but also plays Galaxy Casino owner Art Land. And my God, you could not have 2 more different performances from the same actor in the same movie, unless this was maybe a Mel Brooks movie. But I remember his performances, both of them. This is definitely one of the aspects of the movie that's burned into my brain. And I remember being a kid and like putting the pieces together that Jack Nicholson was playing both of them. And I thought I was so clever for figuring that out. And my dad was like, yeah, of course he is. Like, who, like, it's
well,
like,
the character of Art Land, when you first see him, he's got dark shades on, a big hat, a wig, and he's doing a different voice. Like, it's understandable, especially a kid wouldn't pick up on it, because it seemed like they were trying to like create these distinct characters. But like by the end, like that's all dropped. He has the hat off, you see his hair, he has the glasses off. Like they are not at all trying to
very
hide
clearly just Jack Nicholson. So I do like that we get basically 2 different Jack Nicholson performances in the same film. I think it's interesting that his performance as James Dale is possibly one of the most normal, straightforward Jack Nicholson performances ever, despite the subject matter. Like, it's like, I would say it's arguably like the straightest character that Jack Nicholson has possibly ever played. Because there's like, he's just the president reacting to the world being invaded by Mars. And then he's got one big shining monologue moment as the president that I will say, I was like, oh, you are pretty good at this thing, aren't you?
Yeah, he turns it on there for sure.
He turns it on there just for sure. And, but then you contrast that with Art Land is just like the skeeziest casino owner ever. Just, my God, you hate this guy. And he just looks gross. Like, he's one of those people that I just knew if I were in a place around him, Chris, imagine the smell. Just imagine the smell. And
cigars,
I just know I would
whiskey, and just a little bit of BO.
I don't think it's a little bit. Anyway, so I got to go straight to that. He's arguably our main character, at least for a while
yeah,
there.
I mean, top build, biggest name, but
yeah, and he's the big focus of early parts of the film. Does give way to others throughout the rest of it, but gotta say, it's Jack Nicholson. It's Jack. I mean, what can you say? It's Jack.
It's Jack. It's Jack.
But
great choice, Andrew. I mean, great pick. I love what he's doing as Artland. It is so much fun. You can tell he's having fun, and yeah, as president, it's almost a I don't know. Like, you think Jack Nicholson's playing the president in a movie where we get attacked by Martians. I expect him to be more like the general that we see in this movie, where he's like, guns ablazing, let's go hunt him down. But he's like calm, compassionate, listening to his advisors. Like, it's just not. It's like, why'd you get Jack Nicholson for this almost? But then, like I said, that big speech he has in the war room, the big plea, like, why can't we all just get along? That speech is just, it's like, okay, I see why he was in this part. But then you have Artland as well. Andrew, as a kid, I didn't understand why Jack Nicholson was playing multiple parts. As an adult, though, I still don't get it. I don't know why they did this. I think a part of me assumed, like, oh, well, it's probably like, this is like clearly an homage, a throwback to 1950s sci-fi. They probably did that a lot back then. Now, someone playing multiple characters to save money, but that's not really a staple of that. It's not. It didn't come from that. And the only anecdote I can find about it, like it's sourced everywhere, is that Tim Burton, he had this script and he approached Jack Nicholson. They worked together on Batman, and he was like, "Hey, I've got the script. Check it out. Let me know what character you want to play." And Jack Nicholson apparently says, "How about all of?" Oh, excuse me. He says, "I want to play all of them," and that's it. And like, oh, so he said all of them, but can't do that, so I'll give him 2. And I was like, is that really how that went down? Like, he just made a joke about he liked it so much he'll play all of them, so he gave him 2 parts. It just sounds so strange. Like no thought went into it. It wasn't like, really want to see 2 sides of this character, and each of these characters are connected in this way. But it's just Jack Nicholson plays 2 roles. And it's great. He does a great job. Andrew, I'm not at all going to step on the Mark Strong Award here, but I couldn't help but have this thought. Imagine if Jack Nicholson did not play 2 roles. Imagine if Jack Nicholson only played the president and Michael Keaton played Artland.
Or even swap it. Or even swap it the other way.
Either way.
Keaton is
Either
the
way.
president.
Artland, his voice is so close to Beetlejuice, and obviously Michael Keaton and Tim Burton work together so much. But
wait,
I'm not
follow
saying
me if you will. I'm going even further down this path. What if Nicholson just plays the president and Danny DeVito plays Artland, and then anybody plays the rude gambler,
the random gambler that Danny DeVito played? It was imperative that character is 410, Andrew. How dare you?
I gotta wonder if this was literally that thing that he sent the script to everyone, and then it got to the point where literally all that was left for people after a certain point were the smallest of bit parts. They
probably gave rude gambler a line because Danny DeVito said he could, he's available 2 days to come shoot. And I love how during The Great Escape, that character has to get killed because they probably didn't have Danny DeVito long enough to shoot the rest of The Big Escape. And just we'll get to scenes. I love that scene.
Yeah.
But it's great. I mean, I love the approach to the casting of this. Throw a bunch of celebrities in there, faces in there, even if they get killed off very quickly. That is more in line with some of the throwbacks they are paying homage to. But Nicholson, I mean, can't go wrong with that as a Mark Strong Award winner. Man, we haven't talked about Jack Nicholson on this podcast, I don't think, because I think Batman '89 is the one Burton Batman, or that era of Batman movie that we have not covered. I don't know when else we would have been able to talk about Nicholson, but hey, Mark Strong Award winner, Jack Nicholson, well deserved, of course. I'm picking somebody else. I am going to give my Mark Strong Award to an alum of the show, to someone that I can't remember if we gave him a Mark Strong Award. I've really got to make a list of a Mark Strong Award winner so I can keep track of this. That is Put a pin in that. We're going to work on that. Pierce Brosnan as Professor Donald Kessler is getting my Mark Strong Award. Andrew,
This is Brosnan at like the peak of his powers too. Like this
it's
is
James
like,
Bond Brosnan. Like, hey, just bring that over here. Be cool, be suave, be intelligent, and flirt with a woman. Like, just bring that skill set over to this stupid movie I'm making here. It's great. Follow me if you will here. Speaking of greatest actor of all time, Michael Keaton. I've always been a fan of Michael Keaton, and I'm loving the renaissance that he has going on here. But there was a period of his career, late 90s, early 2000s, where he was not in a lot of hits, making some other movies. But I still kept tabs on him. I was like, I like Michael Keaton. I want to see what he's doing. He made this movie called White Noise.
Yep.
That was about the phenomenon of, what's it called, EVP or something like that. Like you record just the air and you can pick up ghost noises. I saw it back in the day. I don't remember it. But what I do remember is reading reviews about it. Because I was reading all these reviews of my Keaton movies. Like, where are the good ones? What should I check out? Not a lot of good reviews out there for it. But I remember this line in this review that just will always stay with me. And it talks about a character that shows up in that movie to explain what this voice phenomenon is. And the review said he has a British accent and he wears a white coat. Therefore, you know that he is believable. And I was like, huh, that really is like a shorthand in movies. Like, the British accent is associated with intelligence. And it's not something from like the 80s and 90s we've grown past. Like, that is in the language of film, at least American cinema, that is still used to this day. And I pick up on it every time now. And I always remember that review for the Michael Keaton film White Noise that highlighted that for me. But it is absolutely true. I mean, they had to have an expert in this movie, an advisor to the president, a scientist, a biologist, to weigh in on it and try to figure out these creatures' motivations. And they got Pierce Brosnan, who wears a white coat and has a English accent. And they go one step further. He's always like
Irish.
puff. He's what?
He's Irish.
But he's not using his Irish accent.
No,
right?
not here.
Okay,
I said
okay,
he's using it despite being Irish.
I don't know if it would scream reliable scientist.
That's actually the cross section that somebody needs to figure out. If the British accent is an indication of intelligence, what is the Irish accent an indication of? Anger? Like, what is that?
Anger. This is Hollywood speaking, not me. Drunkenness. Like, that's usually when they loop that one in. Yep. But
just think groundskeeper Willie. Like, that's what you're.
Well, that's Scottish now, Andrew. Easy.
Oh, my mistake.
We're gonna have 3 very angry listeners.
Do you expect Hollywood to differentiate between the two of those?
Pierce Brosnan in this movie, I love it. I like his eyes puffing on that pipe just to really drive it home, really take it over the top. And I love this weird flirting thing that he has with Sarah Jessica Parker. Then their courtship lasts longer than their bodies in this film, and it just gets wild. I just love the concept of this character. And my favorite aspect of this film, just to jump ahead a little bit, we'll dive into it more when we talk about scenes, but my favorite aspect of this film is like, Martians arrive. What do they want? It's Pierce Brosnan's job to try to figure that out. Do they come in peace? And he deduces, well, they're far advanced with technology, therefore intelligent, therefore more likely to be peaceful. And they have that first meeting where they shoot the dove and then shoot everybody. He's like, that was probably a miscommunication. They have to be peaceful. And they do it again. And Andrew, we never find out why the Martians come here, why they're killing humans, why they're doing we never find their true motivations. And it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't care. Like, this is a 1950s movie, homage, where Martians come and attack Earth. It's called Mars Attacks. That's all you need to know. That's all we need to do. And I love that we don't bother diving into it any farther than that. The Martians, they're just here to attack. That's it. And I love the idea of this character trying to figure out their motivation, and he's wrong, and we don't find out what their motivation actually is. It's my favorite aspect of this film. At the center of that is Pierce Brosnan. Therefore, Mark Strong Award.
I think this is a great pick. I love the notion that, like, I don't know that he's dumb, but he's wrong the whole movie. Like, he's just like, he's
some point we should realize they're not coming in peace, but he's not the only
Right.
one that's insisting that they do. Like, the president wants
True.
to be there at the second meeting. Like, people are still attending. Like, it's a crowded parliament whenever they attack the
Right.
second time. Like, everyone's doing that. But yeah, you would think you would figure it out.
at a certain point. Now, what is interesting to me is that the original Mars Attacks cards do outline specifically why they're invading. They don't just outline why they're invading; they resolve the story in a very completely different way as well.
Did you read the backs of all those cards? Because you sent me that link of all the cards, and I flipped through them all, and I looked at the pictures. Did you read the backs of them, or did you read
Yes.
the synopsis?
Yes, Chris, I did.
You read through the whole full 54-part story?
I did. Chris, it was like 3 sentences
Kudos.
a card. I mean, we're not talking the Mississippi
look.
here. But no, so in the cards, they invade Earth, and a lot of the cards are just depictions of things happening. But eventually, the way we overcome the Martians in the Mars Attacks cards, we go to Mars and fight them there. That's what
I
ends
do
up
remember
happening.
the card of Mars getting blown up. I think
we
that's the
attack
final
Mars, but
resolution, yeah.
the implication of why they're attacking Earth is that there is a cataclysm that Mars is headed for, like some sort of like extinction event that Mars is going to be facing. And so they're coming to Earth because they want Earth for themselves, basically. And we repel them back to Mars, and then after we defeat them on Mars, the cataclysm happens, ensuring that they will never be back. So it is actually a full story told over the course of these 54 cards. It is pretty wild, and obviously we changed that ending here. We'll talk about that more with the scenes. But
Well,
Pierce
I think
Brosnan-
that ending plays better on the trading cards, and I
Right.
get why it's there. I'm glad the creators of this movie left that out.
that would have
'cause I think
been too much. It would have been too
And
much.
I'm glad they left out the giant bugs, because that gives it a whole
yes.
different feel. And one of those cards was a giant spider, and I would not have wanted to see that on the screen. So
I apologize for that.
it's fine. It's fine. I made it through.
No, I agree. Like, because at a certain point, like, it does feel like the cards are paying homage to like 50s sci-fi with like the giant ants, the giant bugs, and like the giant robots at a certain point. And like you said, you pointed this out, but like almost all of the Martian iconography is from these cards. The way the Martians look, the way their suits look, the way their weapons look, the way their ships look, the way their stuff looks, like the robots they use and everything. It's almost all 1-to-1 off of those cards.
Yeah, they don't
That
get
was a
Burtonized.
very interesting
Yeah,
choice. No, they don't. They do not. They get a little bit modernized just for the sake of the fact that they're kind of having to be on film versus a drawing. They look a little cleaner, I guess, especially like some of the designs. But
yeah.
I was that was mostly why I went looking for them, is I wanted to see how close some of this was, and the answer is yes. It is about as close as it gets. And a lot of the iconography of stuff, like certain scenes, like the cow's on fire, pulled directly from a card. Like that's directly on one of the cards.
Yep.
And so that really does show just how deep Gems went into that script. He really did want to be like, I'm pulling the actual cards into this story. But that being said, Pierce Brosnan, a great pick here. Like I said, this is him at the peak of his powers. It's basically James Bond. But I just love that, like, he's wrong the entire movie, basically. Like, he's literally disembodied on their ship, just his head floating around. And at that moment, I would have to assume he'd be like, well, misjudged that one a bit, didn't I?
But he just never accepts it. He's like, why? It doesn't make any sense. And that he never evolves beyond that. He's like, I still don't.
And that's
get it.
another kind of classic sci-fi trope, is just, it makes no sense, the kind of doctor that just doesn't believe what's happening. And so very well done, and a great pick. A love
Andrew,
of the show, like you said.
Did we give him a Mark Strong on? I don't think we did on his James Bond episode.
Nobody got it for Black Adam.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, there you go. 2-time Mark Strong Award winner. Heck yeah. You deserve it, Brosnan. All right. A lot of cast to get through here. The size of these.
A lot of
cards
these are probably going to be
vary,
rapid
but
fire,
we
guys.
got it. We got to talk about all of them. Like Glenn Close is in this movie. Professional, serious actor Glenn Close is the first lady of this movie in Mars Attacks. Honestly, Andrew, the most memorable part for me is her getting crushed by that chandelier. It is brutal. I mean, this movie, like, it's pretty graphic. It's all presented in a way that makes it palatable for.
Yeah, like there's not a lot of blood, but there's a lot of destruction and a lot of like.
But when you tell someone like, yeah, you see Pierce Brosnan chopped into 6 different parts, and you see all those parts strung up at the same time, that sounds horrific. You think like Saw. You think like I'm gonna be queasy after I'm looking, but it's just like something about the sci-fi aesthetic that I mean, I don't know what it is because he literally has blood dripping out of his severed neck, like little drops coming out. But it's not. It's just the concept, I guess, is so goofy that we just and maybe some people do have a hard time watching it. I don't know, but I was able to stomach that stuff and kind of just laugh at it. And the chandelier falling on her, and it's very clearly a dummy at the point of impact that just smashes. Beautiful. I love it. Before that, I mean, her main dynamic was with her daughter, and she's kind of not the best mom. And then I guess she kind of gets her comeuppance, you could kind of say, by getting that chandelier.
Not just crushed by a chandelier, crushed by the Nancy Reagan chandelier, proving once again that the Reagans needed to be stopped.
I thought you were going to say that the Reagans are still crushing America decades later. Either one.
I wasn't quite going to go that hard, just for the sake of any potential super conservative listeners.
Okay,
but,
you'll piss off the Scots that listen to us, but not the conservatives, Andrew. I see where you draw your
I don't want to get
lines.
us canceled, man. The Scots can't cancel us alone.
That sounds like a threat. We're going to have like a
my red hair is Scottish.
Uprising.
I'm one of their people.
Annette Bening is in this movie as Barbara Land. Mark Strong Award winner Jack Nicholson's character, Art Land's wife, who I think she's just kind of waiting for him to make a lot of money, kind of the impression I get. I don't know if there's a lot of love there. And then once he dies, she's like, all right, well, it's time for me to get out of here, and ends up being our kind of one of our final survivors of the movie. Kind of get to follow her journey from being handcuffed to this guy to being out for herself, and I guess use a ray gun and get in on some of the action. So character arc might be a little strong, but compared to a lot of the characters we get here, it's something.
Yeah, she apparently Susan Sarandon was originally set to play this part before Annette Bening got cast, and Bening kind of modeled the character after Anne Margaret's performance in Viva Las Vegas, obviously playing with that Vegas aesthetic. But she does a good job there. I think, like you said, arc is a little bit of a harsh term, but she's one of the only people that has the foresight to actually prep and kind of think about a plan about what to do, like going to a remote mountain, remote caves, and kind of bringing supplies and being able to survive. She just needs someone to fly a plane, which seems like a very integral part of the plan you would have thought of before, but I'm watching the movie wrong. But not a lot here, but like I said, gets to get in on the action, a big part of our kind of, as all of our pieces are kind of moving around in the finale, a big part of that, and pretty fun.
We already mentioned Danny DeVito. He plays a rude gambler.
That's it.
Although, moments that are burned into my brain. Whenever he runs into Tom Jones, he goes, "Hey, Tom Jones, it's not unusual," and kind of like sings it real fast.
Yeah.
And like he's excited to meet him. That little interaction is burned into my brain.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
This movie is like why I know who Tom Jones is, and hey, he's a credited actor in this movie. We'll talk about him. But Danny DeVito giving that excited little performance. I mean, there's nothing to say about the character. He's just here because it's Danny DeVito.
Yep.
And
There's
that's
nothing
fine.
else there.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's good. Give me Danny DeVito in every movie. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Andrew. Martin Short.
Jesus, this movie doesn't stop.
Press Secretary Jerry Ross. It's so loaded. Andrew, I literally watched the latest episode of Only Murders in the Building, turned it off, or it ended, and then I started Mars Attacks. And then Martin Short pops up. I go, why he is so young? Like, it was Jaws. Like, oh my God. It's jarring. I did the math. He's in his 40s, I think, already.
Yeah.
He looked 18. I mean,
He does.
Just going from, watching him in Only Murders. Great show, by the way. I don't know if we ever talked about that on mic, but really love that show. Really enjoyed the new season. I've got it all figured out. Ask me on Discord. Like the show, like his performance there. I like him here, and he looks crazy young. Looks great for his age. Does not look like he's in his 40s here. Interesting character. A lot of laughs. We'll get to it in scenes, but there's this scene where like we see him like picking up some prostitutes, and it's like, all right, well that has happened, and we just move on. And it's like, why did we need to see it? Why do we need to know that? And then he goes to the White House and he picks up a prostitute that ends up being an alien in disguise. I was like, I guess we just needed to establish that this character likes his prostitutes so that we can set up this gag where he brings the, like, I don't know if we needed that first one to set up the second one, but that scene was just so out of nowhere.
It is.
But whenever he is trying to woo the Martian, great stuff. Good.
Yeah,
I mean, smart.
Good comedic chops.
Smart. He's a funny guy. Turns out. Yeah, it's Marty.
Turns out Martin Short's pretty funny. Yeah. Dude, that scene where he's with the Martian woman that's another one that's like in my head almost endlessly just because of how just ridiculous he's being. But
the Kennedy room.
The Kennedy room. And he's acting like he's one of those people that's like he expects everybody to be so impressed with him. And when the Martian woman kind of stonewalls him, he seems so confused. But then he loses a finger.
Makes him want her even more, Andrew.
Ew. There's some troubling power dynamics at play there that I don't like.
Sarah Jessica Parker plays Natalie Lake, I'm gonna say TV reporter. I guess she's like a talk show host. I mean, it's kind of
like a fashion reporter. Like
she's in the media some way. But why is she interviewing Pierce Brosnan though?
There's a weird like. They hint at it a few times that like there's some kind of connection between Michael J. Fox, who we'll talk about in a second, and Sarah Jessica Parker, but that like the network they're on seems to start preferring Sarah Jessica Parker to do the bigger things versus him.
Interesting.
Like that's like you see it a couple of times. Like at one point, it's like he's gonna come on my show, and he's like, "Why would he come on your show?" Like he doesn't understand. But I think it's that there's a subtle implication there that Jason
she is attractive,
Stone's
therefore
straightforward, kind of every news anchor ever approach isn't interesting, but Sarah Jessica Parker's like fashionista show approach is more popular. Something like that.
Interesting. Well, she interviews Pierce Brosnan, and they start flirting with each other. Her current significant other dies, and so she's free to explore this romance. But her head is put on the body of a chihuahua, and she's on a flying saucer most of the movie, so it makes that a little bit difficult. But
it does.
Sarah Jessica Parker's head on a chihuahua, maybe the most iconic. Anybody has seen this movie. Like that's the movie they put the head on a dog, right? I mean, I think that's, or the other way around too. The dog on her body is also something you'll never forget.
Ack.
Michael J. Fox, we just mentioned, plays Jason Stone. Her reporter, I think they're just boyfriend. I don't think they're married. This movie happens very fast. I don't know. He has like 2 or 3 scenes before he is killed. One of my favorite deaths in the movie, as they are crawling towards each other, they finally embrace, but his body gets evaporated, so she's just holding his severed hand at the end of that. It's good. It's Michael J. Fox. Let me think about his career in '96. Obviously, it's after all the Back to the Futures. It's one of the only times I can think of, maybe the first time he plays like a jerk. I mean, can you think of a time where Michael J. Fox is like they're definitely playing against type with this character, which I think is an interesting use of him. But he's just so damn likable. Usually, it was a fun little twist.
Yeah, I agree. This is '96, so I think Spin City had just started. That was a sitcom he was on for a great many years in the late '90s. There,
streaming anywhere? I want to rewatch that show.
That's a great question.
I will research. You keep talking about Michael J. Fox.
Anyway, it is weird because he basically plays a jerk there. He's like super possessive over his sort of girlfriend there. Because like at one point, Pierce Brosnan like puts his hand on her leg, and he's like, look right there. He just copped a feel. Like he's
Yeah.
like very, very intensely concerned there. But also super like vain. We get like a lot of instances where like he's watching himself and he's like, "Go the hair looks good. The hair looks good." He's like checking his own hair, and like when his girlfriend acknowledges him at like the Martian landing, he's kind of like he doesn't. Again, you're kind of seeing that like divergence of ideas. Kind of that idea that he's the Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather, straightforward, hard hitting TV newsman, whereas she's this kind of fluff reporter that's now suddenly overtaking him and he doesn't like it, which could be a potential commentary on the declining nature of American society. But I'm not going to go that far into thinking that. But not any more than I already have today. But so like you said, he's kind of a jerk though. Like it's a little weird and a little jarring to be like America's favorite, Michael J. Fox, now suddenly a jerk.
Spin City is currently streaming on Pluto, which I assume means it would have ads. I don't know. It's a more authentic way to watch it, I guess. So I might have to go
only
check
if they're
out.
period to the time ads.
That's true, and which they won't be.
Man,
It'll be the same
I'm
two
not even
ads
gonna
going
lie.
back and forth.
If they genuinely did that with old syndicated shows, showed ads, but they were the period ads from the time, I bet you there's a market for that.
Isn't that sad, Andrew? I agree with you. Like, if you could tell me I could watch a block of Nicktoons with, Go-Gurt Capri Sun ads in between, I'd be like, yeah, I'll do that every day. But it's also, I know it's sad, but it sounds so appealing. Spin City streaming on Pluto. And then I was like, well, hey, maybe there's, the DVDs are available. I can watch the DVDs or throw them on my Plex. So I went to eBay and I did Spin City Complete DVD, and the first result, $150. I think that's kind of a steep price for the complete series of Spin City. No, that's for season 3. The complete season 3 is $150. We have season 2 for $56, season 2 for $40, seasons 1 through 6 for $145. Pre-owned. Okay. That's not too
If you go
bad.
to Amazon, they have season 1 for $16 and season 5 for $13. They have none of the rest of them.
Gotta be an out of print situation. I wonder if the Charlie
100%.
Sheen seasons hold up. I think my family kept watching it. Once he bowed out, Charlie Sheen came in. So I wonder if it would be worth watching the whole thing. I don't know. I'll put this on my list. That was a good show. Andrew, who else is in this movie?
We've covered pretty much all of the main players at this point, all of the big kind of names. There's other people in the movie. We did mention Tom Jones, another part of this movie that's burned into my head. That was my introduction to Tom Jones, I'm sure.
Yes.
He plays a version of himself that kind of comes into the proceedings in the third act. And guess what? He can fly a plane. So he becomes integral to our hero's survival.
And animals love the man. Him walking out of the cave,
they
like
love
the
the
bird
man.
landing on his arm. It's so good.
So I do find that very funny. He mostly hangs out with Annette Bening's Barbara Land, as well as 2 other characters we were introduced. Jim Brown as retired boxing champion Byron Williams, and Janice Rivera as Cindy. Cindy and Byron are workers from a casino. They dress in Egyptian paraphernalia.
The whole
Byron
movie.
Williams is, yes, the whole movie. They never change clothes. Janice Rivera, just a kind of a bit part actor throughout several years. Jim Brown, playing Byron Williams, was an American football fullback, civil rights activist, and actor, considered to be one of the greatest running backs of all time, as well as one of the greatest players in NFL history. So cool. Had no idea.
What a get from Mars Attacks.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
I mean, I knew he was a football player, but such a badass. Dude, at the end,
just
whenever
cool.
he strips his gaudy like shoulder pieces off and just has like the chest and starts boxing because he's a retired boxer in this movie. He starts boxing the aliens, and then you think he's dead. Then he shows up at the end and he stomps on their brains. So cool. Coolest
So cool.
character in the movie.
So cool. Absolutely. Very, very cool. Just cool stuff. A few other people we could mention, I guess. There's just a bit, we're into bit parts here. We'll talk about 2 kind of more important, or 3 more important ones here in a second. But We also have Jack Black shows up very briefly as Billy Glenn Norris.
He dies
brother.
quickly, but like what I noticed is okay, he's like super gun ho to go fight these Martians, and then he finally gets his chance, and he's running across the pseudo battlefield that they're on in the most like I'm performing for you here. I know that people can't see what I'm doing, but like this is
The most animated expressive.
He has
runs
the
with his whole body.
physicality locked in already. Like he's already got what we're gonna come to see in many more movies when his career takes off. Like he's already got this like performance within him, and yeah, the physicality is great. And then of course he finally gets the gun, it's gonna blow him away, and it's not loaded. He gets killed. But memorable.
I love
part.
There's a notion of his death that's interesting because they seem to imply it was shown on TV. Because like his parents watch it happen.
They see everything
And-
we're seeing. Yeah,
Yeah, they like watch it. They're like, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. And I was like, oh man, what? That's awful. Pam Grier does show up as Louise Williams, Byron's estranged wife. They're trying to reconcile. And then we also have Ray J and Brandon Hammond as their children. But
dude, that's Ray J. Like that's the guy that every YouTube channel is trying to sell me his ear pods. That's that Ray J.
I guess, Chris.
What? And
but
he's
three
cousins with
people-
Sasha Banks. Did you know this, Andrew?
I did not.
Which of course means he's cousins with Snoop Dogg.
Yep.
All right. Anyway, I had nothing interesting to say about that. I just didn't know that was him in this movie.
And
I've heard the name Ray J a lot,
Brandy is
and I
his
didn't
sister.
know.
I don't know if you knew that too.
I did not know that. I've always heard the name Ray J in these various reasons, and I never knew. Like I didn't know I've seen a movie he's in. That's crazy.
Yes. Anyway, there's 4 other people I do want to, or I guess 3 more people I want to kind of zoom in on. One of which is Lucas Haas, who plays Richie Norris. This is Jack Black's brother and the son of Jodon Baker and Olan Jones, Glenn Norris and Sue Ann Norris. They're kind of the son they don't really care about, who lives with them at the trailer park, works at a donut shop. He's intrigued by the Martians. He thinks this is very cool, but ends up kind of being the key to their destruction through the help of his grandma, Florence, played by Sylvia Sidney, another Tim Burton alumnus, known for playing, what's her name in that movie? Juno?
But
Beetlejuice. She plays the Maitland's kind of like caseworker in the underworld.
oh yeah, I didn't even put that together. Yeah.
I love her in that movie. I think
She inhales the cigarette and it comes out her slit throat.
yeah,
right?
like
That's
the
it, yeah.
slit throat. Yeah. She's fantastic in that movie. I just love, like, there's a whole football team that's like hanging out in her office.
Yes.
They keep calling her the coach, and she's like, he's like, Coach, I don't think we survived that crash. And she's like, nothing gets past you, huh? Just fantastic, dry, deadpan delivery that carries over here immensely. She's really, really good in this.
She's
again,
got
a bit
the,
part.
burned into my brain. It was in all the trailers of her saying they blew up Congress and laughing. Every single trailer for this movie, and that line
Yep.
is like the iconic line of the movie for me.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I love her line at the end where she gets a congressional medal from the first daughter, and she's like, "Thank you, honey, and don't ever let this happen again." But I love that. So Sylvia Sidney, I just want to give a shout out to. She's absolutely wonderful here. Lucas Haas is her kind of grandson, and then I guess Natalie Portman as Taffy Dale, I guess, is the last one that I would point out. The first daughter, as it were, Natalie Portman in 96. This is pre-Star Wars, obviously. But a small thing where, again, you're watching and you're just kind of like, wow, Natalie Portman's in this movie. Like I said, if you made this exact movie today with all these same people, it would be 6 times as expensive.
The movie was stacked in 96, and it's only gotten more stacked with things like what you're saying, Natalie Portman and Jack Black. Christina Applegate. Did you mention Christina Applegate in your rundown? She's Jack Black's
I did not. She's
girlfriend.
Yeah, she's briefly in the movie.
And we've got to mention Lisa Marie. We talked about the Martian in disguise, in A Human Disguise, played by Lisa Marie, in a genuine really good performance. That stone face that she keeps the whole time, and that her walk is straight up iconic. I mean, how many times I can say it's burned into my brain? The way her arm shifted back and forth, like she's a Stepford wife or fembot, or we've seen this archetype before. Has it down. It's very cool performance.
She could carry me like a baby. But no, she was Tim Burton's partner at the time, and we know Tim Burton likes putting his partners into all his movies. 93 to 01, they were apparently together. I had no idea. But yeah, that Martian girl, Martian prostitute, whatever you want to call her, another of the most probably iconic images of this movie, the giant beehive hairdo hiding the Martian brain, just like the biting off of the figure, the gum, everything, all of that it just it's the kind of thing where you watch it as an adult and you're just like, oh, this was for kids, huh? It's the same with the cards. Like, you look at the cards and you're like, oh, these were for children. Were they? But anyway, a massively stacked cast.
So stacked. I think we covered the major players. We can talk about more bit parts as we go through scenes, but now it's time to do just that. Talk about the scenes of this movie, specifically our favorite scenes, the best scenes of the film. I'll let you go ahead and kick us off here. Andrew, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders, and what is the best scene in Mars Attacks?
I am going to go with the initial Martian attack at the original kind of ambassador meeting they have. So at this point, the Martians, we know they're there. The world has acknowledged that they're there. We're kind of mulling our options. We've got we got Rod Steiger as General Decker. General Decker's kind of the kind of hawkish, wants to basically take them out before they take us out. And so going against his advice, President agrees to meet the Martians as kind of foreign ambassadors and orders General Casey to welcome them to Earth. And so we set up a big thing. We've got our Martian translator device on site. Fun fact, while I did point this out, Frank Welker makes all of the Martian noises because Frank Welker is the GOAT. The voice on the translation machine is a gentleman named Roger L. Jackson, who would go on to become notable for being the voice of Mojo Jojo. No, Ghostface. It's
Wait,
Ghostface,
is he also
folks.
Mojo Jojo?
Yes, he is.
What?
He's
Dude,
fantastic.
that is the coolest credits you can have on your resume. Like, maybe not the most popular, maybe the most iconic, maybe they didn't make you the most money, but it's the coolest 3 voice roles you can have. The translator of Mars Attacks, Mojo Jojo of the Powerpuff Girls, and Ghostface of the Scream franchise. What a cool bunch of credits you list on your
I would
resume.
love to meet Roger L. Jackson one day. I think he's genuinely somebody that's way higher on my meet at a convention list than some other.
In the line of that convention. I mean, he's pulling him in from all directions.
The Mars Attacks group is really gonna make.
They're really diehards.
They are. But just wanted to shout that out. And apparently, this movie is what helped him to get the audition to do Ghostface. So, thanks, Tim Burton. You did us all solid there. But so anyway, we set up this meeting. We have this initially kind of tense meeting where we're not really sure if the message is getting through. We're using the translator. It seems we're all on the same page, but then as we kind of pointed out, somebody releases a dove after they say they come in peace. And the ambassador kind of freaks out for a second, kills it with his ray gun, and then they turn on the assembled crowds and attack them with our ray guns. We basically get our first glimpse at the Martians' power. And even the whole build up to this, like the news crews kind of watching the saucer approach, and like Sarah Jessica Parker being like, a ramp is coming out from the ship that looks like a giant tongue as it like unrolls down. Like just the way they do all that, it builds up that moment. Like I said, we mentioned it before. The Martians here are pulled straight off of those cards as far as their design, as far as their look. So that's Wally Wood on screen for us. Very, very cool. But then we get this brutality that follows this. And I do remember very vividly the skeletons of the people they vaporize being the colors of the lasers they were shooting. So like if somebody got hit with the red laser, they turned into a red skeleton. If somebody got hit with the green laser, they turned into a green skeleton. So as Michael J. Fox is like crawling around the ground trying to get to Natalie, he's like got these bones of all these people around him all these different colors, and it just created a very visually distinct thing. So it would have been easy to just have everybody turn to dust or something, but even by keeping the skeletons there, you leave something behind and you make it look otherworldly and weird, and it just creates a very cool visual sense here. And in this skirmish, like I said, Michael J. Fox's character dies, Jack Black's character dies, General Casey gets killed. It's just kind of an all-out bloodbath. Very few people survive. I think the only people that do inherently are Sarah Jessica Parker and her dog. I think they get abducted, and that is it. But I think it's a very cool scene. It immediately shows off the Martians and the threat they produce, even though they look kind of like they're weird looking and kind of disgusting. But like, you don't, like, if I was next to that Martian, I would be like, I can fight you. This is easy. This is not a problem. But this shows that it is a problem, just a little bit. So I like the scene a lot. I think it sets the stage for what we got coming. Shows that we've got this very real threat, but it's going to be presented in this kind of very 50s sci-fi way. And it just looks cool.
It's great. I mean, it really kicks off this movie. The movie's called Mars Attacks. You know what's going to happen. You've probably heard about it or seen trailers, even if you're seeing this in theaters. But the movie doesn't take that for granted, and it still builds it up, as you're saying, with the slow reveal, the ramp, them walking out, the translator, we come in peace. When that dove is released, especially when you see it's now a CG bird, it's just flying through the air and it's making a big deal out of it, like, you know what's going to happen. But it's still hilarious when they zap the dove. And then they go on this killing spree. And this is one of those things, like you said, it's like a bloodbath here. I mean, people are getting slaughtered left and right. And it's fun. It's a wild thing this movie is able to do with its tone and aesthetic. But like, this is such a blast, pun intended, of a scene that I think it's a great pick for best scene in the movie. In fact, I picked the second attack as my favorite, but they're just like 1A and 1B. It's just the same gag over again, but I just really get a kick out of the humans being like,
no way,
maybe.
They'll do it again.
Yeah, maybe. We won't ask them to disarm or anything. We'll invite them into where there's more people. And I love, just to roll on to the second attack, I love where the alien ambassador walks up to the podium and reaches into their robe and pulls out the message that they received from the humans on like the ticker tape, basically. And everyone kind of freaks out for a minute. They go, oh, he's just pulling that out. And then he reaches in again, and now he pulls out a laser and starts shooting people. Like, just like the fake out. Yeah. To me, that's if we do get a motivation, I think that's it, Andrew. I think it's that these Martians are little stinkers. I think they're just little troublemakers that just want to come here and just like have fun and just kill people because they can. Like, I think it's their entire motivation. Like, it wasn't a tactical decision to do the fake out. It was only for their entertainment. Bowling over the Easter Island heads with a giant ball. They're just here to have fun, just to entertain themselves. And I think it's just such a fun idea, and it's kind of revealed in that scene, and just the humans being so dumb to do this again. I love the Jack Nicholson, the president's watching. It's like, oh, I really should be there. And Martin Short's like, oh, they have this picky rule where they don't want the executive branch and the legislative branch in the same building at the same time for some reason. Just
yes, there's a whole show about that called Designated Survivor. Which is that the presidential line of succession is never all in one place together. But
what a title, Designated. You're the weight of that title is wild.
Yeah, and usually it's like during like that. They should, and if you can, you should cast Kiefer Sutherland in it. Anyway, this is a great scene. Like you said, it's the same gag. It's the same, like, there's no way they do it again. I do love later in the movie as well, where the French president calls our president, and he's like, He's like, they've agreed to a compromise, or they've agreed to a solution, and the president's like, dude, get out of that room. And then it cuts back to them, and they're all being shot, and he like hears it on the phone, and you can just see he's just like, just hangs up the
Losing
so
all hope.
disillusioned with just like, it's just like that thing where you tell yourself, there's no way we'd do it again, right? They would in fact do it again. And like I get it, like we're clearly outmatched by these guys, so like people are trying to do anything but like you said, I think part of it is just that the Martians are doing it because they know they can. Liz walked in like during that Earth destruction sequence where they were like destroying monuments. She's like, did they really show Muslim people praying and then show them destroying the Taj Mahal? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, I'm leaving now. It's just like, ugh. That whole sequence.
This comes out the same year as Independence Day.
It does.
And it feels like it's a parodying it, which obviously is not. They're in production at the same time. But like both movies are destroying monuments, but Independence Day is doing it to be like, wow, look at this destruction. And Mars Attacks is purely doing it as a gag.
I do love the skeletons that leave behind remind me of Batman, where Joker just fries that dude down to a skeleton.
Oh, yeah. See, I thought of Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man, where out of nowhere, one time, the Goblin uses pumpkin bombs that turn you into a skeleton. Like, that's a pretty powerful weapon. We should use that more often.
I say, where did that go?
This happens once. I don't know.
But yeah, just the Jack Nicholson Joker turning a guy into a skeleton with his hand buzzer.
I was trying to remember during the war room scene. I knew Jack Nicholson was going to get killed. I remember that, and I was trying to remember how, and he reaches out for the handshake. I was like, oh, do they reverse Joker him? Is it the handshake? Does it shock him? And it is the handshake, but it's the hand detaches and crawls around and stabs him through the heart. Joker would also do that.
Yeah. It's not out of the realm of possibility for the Joker. That whole sequence is just absolutely wild. Well, like you said, it's the same joke, but it's still funny. It still works. You're getting a different framing here, obviously, but like you said, they're basically just the Roadrunner at this point, or why? Like they're just messing with us.
Let me get real specific, because Roadrunner like is always just escaping, and Wile E. Coyote makes himself look dumb, but they are like antagonizing, like. We shoot a nuclear warhead at them, and they suck it up into like a balloon, and then they inhale it like it's helium. Yeah, like Roadrunner wouldn't do that, but I don't even know what character that would be. But yeah, they're little stinker. I guess they're
Jerry,
evil
Jerry.
Bugs Bunnies. Yeah, there you go. Jerry. There you go.
Jerry.
That's a good one. We are the Tom. Yeah, it's great. I love any of those moments where they're just clearly just there to have fun. I love their little speedos as they're chilling on their ship. I love during like towards the end, the real big destruction sequence. I mean, Vegas is like in shambles. They're walking the streets as cars are getting destroyed, and one of them is carrying the translator, and it's saying, "Don't run, we are your friends. Don't run, we are your friends." Like they're clearly just lying the whole time, just because it's entertaining to them, and that's good. That's good, Andrew.
It is. That's gold, Jerry. I do love that scene where they attack the kind of underground bunker as well. Like you said, you pointed out we've pointed out the kind of death of Dale just a second ago, but just them bursting in. The shrink ray they use is another thing directly from the cards that they use on General Decker. It's another thing that shrinks him down, and then they just step on him, and the president's just like, no. And just kind of like slides off. But I love that whole thing. Like I said, the impassioned speech, you call it impassioned, but it's also probably slightly manic and slightly crazed, because at this point the president knows what's going to happen. So
his hands, Jack Nicholson acts with his hands so much. He's always like fidgeting them as he's getting those words out. And I really like that speech. And Andrew, this movie made me ask my parents 2 questions. One of them was here during this scene. He gives this whole speech that ends with, "Can't we all get along?" And I asked my dad, I was like, "Oh, is this the movie where that's from? Like, I've heard that before. Is this Is Mars Attacks the originator of Can't We All Get Along? And I'm pretty sure he was just like, no, son.
No.
But my question to you now is that a reference to something specific, or is that just kind of like a vague general line that just gets used all the time?
I think it's more just a vague general line that gets used all the time. I'm sure there's tons of movies that can like just be like, can't we all just get along? I mean, I remember that from The Replacements, man. Like I remember it from that.
Well, they were referencing Mars Attacks, Andrew.
They clearly were. So, yeah. I don't know. It's generic enough line that it just has to be like something that we've been referencing forever. I think. Hold on. Let's see what the internet has to say.
So, okay, while you're doing that, the other question that I remember asking my parents is at the very end of this movie.
Oh, God. Oh, man.
Did we miss something huge?
Rodney King said it. Rodney King said it in 92.
Jesus Christ, Andrew. I got to leave it in. I can't cut all that out.
Oh,
now
no.
we look.
Oh, God.
Well, hang on. Are
man.
you oh-godding us for not knowing it, or are we
Yes.
oh-godding Mars Attacks for 4 years later, referencing Rodney King?
I'm upset
movie?
that we didn't know that and didn't, just didn't,
Okay,
Yeah.
look, in our defense, we've seen the homages, the parodies, and the references way more, obviously, than the original, which happened. I hate, God, even calling it the original. We got to get out of here, Andrew. I'm not.
We do.
Let's move on.
Eject.
The other question I remember asking my parents, the very end of this movie. Oh God, the very end of this movie. When our donut boy is giving that speech, that horrible speech, clearly just like not at all prepared to be in this position. And he's like, oh, I guess we have to rebuild and stuff. And I was thinking maybe we could live in teepees because they're better in a lot of ways. And I remember going, I was like, hey, why are teepees better? And my dad was just like, I don't know. It's just like, I'm not even gonna try. He's like, I don't know how they said that, son. But stop. But that scene is weird. Watching it now as an adult, are we supposed to think this guy's an idiot? I remember being a kid and thinking he's kind of like the moral, the lesson coming in at the end here, being this wholesome person. But I think he's just kind of dumb. I think he's kind of dumb throughout. It's nice that he saves his grandma, but he doesn't have any good ideas in his speech. He's not a good talker. He's not inspiring. I think it's maybe a send up of what you would expect to happen at that time.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I don't think the movie's trying to present him as suddenly some great public speaker, but I think he's just kind of, you even just look at his life and where he's at, and just, I think he's just kind of an idiot who's been put in a position that he shouldn't be. He does not need to give a speech. The speech the grandmother gives offhand to the first daughter is the better speech.
Right. I like the scene where he is rescuing his grandma, which I love that he goes to rescue his grandma.
Yes.
Of course, his parents get killed. Christian Applegate gets killed. And he walks in just before she's about to get blown away. Her headphones get unplugged. Her music plays, and that's they find as a way to kill the aliens. That them song get the right vibrations that their brains explode. And grandma, unaware of what's going around, turns around, sees these aliens with heads exploding. She says, "Richie, I think these guys are very sick." Very earnestly.
I also love that
sick.
I also love that the gun they bring in to kill the grandma is the biggest gun in the world.
Yes.
It's this massive laser that they literally wheel into the room, and I just couldn't believe that just to kill this old woman. It's
more entertaining.
So
They're stingers, Andrew. Wouldn't it be funny if he killed this
are.
frail old woman with the biggest gun possible? I also
Oh,
noted,
my God.
they do it throughout the movie, but I noted it here whenever they have these ray guns that look like super soakers, basically. but they still like cock them, and it makes the sound of like a handgun like loading. Like it makes no sense for the design, but it's just like an audio cue that we'll understand that they're getting their gun ready.
Yeah. Because, all guns make the same noise.
Yeah, of course. Originally, the aliens were going to be stop motion. And so much so that they actually like spent months developing it. I think there's like footage online that you can see of the stop motion test they were doing. And sort of in the 11th hour, they switched to CG. And, Tim Burton was embracing the effects looking bad. That's kind of the idea. He just made Ed Wood. Now he's kind of making an Ed Wood movie or an homage to an Ed Wood movie. It's a lot of synergy going on there. And maybe other than the designs, the art direction, which they got from the cards, maybe in 1996, the CG isn't feeding into that goal of looking dated or old or cheap. But I think it's made the movie age really well because, like, in 96, they were not ready for CG characters. And this movie has a ton of CG characters.
No.
And, like, it looks off. It looks pretty primitive to today's standards. It only makes the movie work better that they're fighting these crappy looking CG aliens. I think it's, probably unintentional, but I think it's helped this movie on later viewings.
I absolutely agree. Like, yeah, that was the wanted to use stop motion, kind of using that as a further homage to the work of guys like Ray Harryhausen, who did Jason and the Argonauts, where like he fights skeletons, but they're stop motion skeletons. And yeah, you watch it now and you're just kind of like, oh, wow. Oh no, but at the time that was revolutionary. It's kind of one of those things where like we kind of look back on it now and kind of like nudge each other and go, "Oh my god, look at how dumb this looks." But like, first off, shut up. It's rude.
In your scenario, you said you were doing it. You said we nudge each other and do it. Are you chastising yourself?
The royal we. Yes, I'm including myself in this conversation. It's the same thing like when you watch Adam West Batman and you're just kind of like, this is really cheesy and dumb, and you're like, yes, and you love it. But yeah, like that idea that like, that kind of herky jerky stop motion, but like at the time that was revolutionary. It's like Star Wars. You watch Star Wars now and there's parts of it where you're still pretty impressive, but there's other things where you're like, oh, we've made it look so much more fluid now. But like, you really do need to remember that at the time, absolutely mind blowing. The fact that you were able to do those things on screen. So I do like that they went with the CG ultimately, and obviously it's odd to me that kept the budget down using CG. It's one of those things that like you kind of frame it now and you're just kind of like, oh wow, somehow that was the cheaper option.
It's got to be the labor that goes in stop motion.
I would assume so just a single, long. For an army of characters, you're looking at a lot of work. I'm glad as well they went with the CG. I think it helps the movie a lot. It creates a very specific aesthetic. And I think it works. I think the movie is all the better for it, like you said.
My single favorite special effect in the movie, though, or visual effect, I should say, is our Martian prostitute, played by Lisa Marie, as we talked about. Confusingly beautiful alien. Gets invited to the White House, goes to the Kennedy room, and as you said, Andrew, she bites off Martin Short's finger because he tries to pull the gum out of her mouth, which is such a, as you said, the power dynamics. He kind of got what was coming to him. I don't feel bad for Martin Short's character getting killed here. But after that bite, her cheek has ripped. The human disguise is a big tear, and you can see the Martian teeth underneath it. And that look is so cool, like a human, skin torn away, alien underneath. And then my favorite visual effect shot, they pull off the head, the mask, as the skin is sliding up the head of the alien. That hole that was revealing the cheek goes up and reveals part of the head as it goes up. At one point, you see the eyeball through the hole as it goes all the way up across the brain and off the head. Looks rad. One of those little details, like they didn't have to go that hard, but they did, and I'm so glad they did. It's so cool.
Yeah, I agree. That whole sequence is just burned into my brain of that whole sequence, from the way she moves, everything. Martin Short is just so He's another guy that, like, by the end of that scene, I'm just kind of like, I'm not sad you're dead. No hate, but your character kind of had it coming.
100%.
But 100%. And then even Jack Nicholson getting to get in on the action a little bit there when he gets ambushed. Jumps over, starts fighting the Martian. Oh, that was pretty cool too. This president's not just going to sit back and take it.
It happened
gets held hostage.
It happened so fast, but I think what happens is in that scene they shoot the dog, which I now know is from the comics. They kill the comics, the cards.
The cards.
They kill the president's dog. It turns into a red skeleton. And then Glenn Close, I think, picks up the dog's skull.
Yep.
And throws it at the alien. Like, what did she just throw? It was red. It's the dog's skull. That's gnarly, dude.
That's gnarly, dude. It's like, I'm sad my dog's dead, but I got to fight for myself at this point.
One last gift from Fido. Thank you. Normally, like, kind of towards the end of these episodes, we'll be like, look, hashtag PP. There's a few things I get criticism, blah, blah, blah. I personally don't really have anything negative to say about this movie. I'm not saying, like, 10 out of 10 masterpiece, it's perfect, but, like, it does exactly what it sets out to do. It's an Anaconda 4 stars, for sure. But I do kind of understand why it had a mixed reception and why it failed at the box office. For one, they released it in December. What the hell is that? This is not a holiday movie. Don't know where that's coming from. But it's just, I think, a little too weird, especially in 96. These aliens, the ack noises, the whole throwback thing. Like, I can understand studios being like, oh, it's Tim Burton, he's weird, they like this weird, it's aliens, it makes sense. But, like, the way he goes with it, it's just on the other side of weird. Like, Edward Scissorhands has, like, the charm and fable and fairy tale part of it, the heart to it. There's always, like, kind of this little hook that works with popular audiences. Obviously Batman has Batman in it, but this is like, it's 100% what's on the surface in a good way. That's the intention, but there's not like this emotional core or this little hook that's going to draw like the wider audience in. I think it was just too weird for like a major release, but personally glad it exists.
Oh, me too. Absolutely. This is like one of those things that, like, I almost sounded like the Martians there for a second. The
Martians is constantly formulating their next sentence. It's like,
they just speak with their. It's like a Tim Curry kind of thing with all of their pronunciations.
It's good podcasting, Andrew.
It's great. Just Mars noises. That's the caption. I hate saying things like this, but like I would hesitate to see any studio make something like this today. Like just taking a chance on like an $80 million movie based off of a trading card set from the 50s. Just feels like such a weird thing. But in that regard, it makes me even more happy that it does exist. It was funny. I was talking with a friend. There was a thing I saw that reminded me of you because I was reminded of some of our conversations. But it said, I don't think younger audiences appreciate that in the 90s, there was an entire genre of film that was just Michael Douglas gets so horny that he ruins his life. And but the notion of just like, it reminded me of like our conversations of like those mid-budget blockbusters, like those $30 million movies. $30 million like in the 90s, absolutely. That's what you would do. You'd get a star, you'd get a movie star, $30 million, and you'd churn out like 6 erotic thrillers every year. Like every couple of months, you just drop a new one. And a shockingly high number of them starred Michael Douglas. I laughed so hard when I read that the first time because I was like, I hate Warsaw. It's super funny, but also it's really true, guys. Look at Michael Douglas's filmography in the 90s. So many of those movies boil down to that dude was horny and didn't deal with it properly. But in that same regard, Mars Attacks being an $80 million. I mean, I would hesitate to think it was like $100 million all inclusive because it was $80 million. And Liz actually mentioned this when she walked in while I was watching it. She was like, I feel like this was everywhere when I was a kid. Like the marketing was all over the place. And I was like,
yes,
I feel the same way. Like it was marketed very heavily. So like, you're looking at a $100 million all-inclusive cost, and then the movie only made $100 million. So you talk about, the theater cuts, things like that. This movie didn't even make its money back. So it's definitely a weird thing, but it's one of those weird things that I'm super glad exists.
In 1988, it was about 26 years after the Mars Attacks trading cards were released. They released Dinosaurs Attacks trading cards. There's a chance we can get another movie in the Attacks series. I'm just saying, that would be a heck of a thing. Look, Tim Burton, we kind of started this thing with saying, his recent projects haven't excited us. That would excite me. Tim Burton's Dinosaurs Attack, I'd buy a ticket to that.
And then you eventually just have to do the crossover, right?
Dinosaurs from Mars Attack?
No, Dinosaurs Attack versus Mars Attack.
Oh, I was trying to
just the dinosaurs versus the dinosaurs versus Martians, man.
And we're just like a third party on the outside?
Yeah, just take my money. Just don't ask for it. Just take it from me. No, apparently, I will say this. Jonathan Gems approached the director, Tim Burton, and pitched both of those to him. He pitched Mars Attacks and Dinosaurs Attack, and they thought that Dinosaurs Attack might be too similar to Jurassic Park or look too similar. And so they avoided it. So instead, they made a movie that steals its finale from Independence Day. Hashtag.
You know what's? I was just thinking, there was no shortage of dinosaur movies in the 90s. This would have been just one more dinosaurs movie. Mario Bros. Ends up being a dinosaurs movie. But I love the music in this movie. Of course, it's Danny Elfman, who's done every Burton movie up to that point, except for Ed Wood, because they were fighting. But it comes back to do this, and it's 1996. It's a movie about aliens. It's a throwback to the 50s, and Danny Elfman has an appropriately throwbacky sci-fi score, complete with a weird theremin sound, throwing back to the old Twilight Zone era. And it works, and it's perfect. In 1997, Men in Black comes out with a score by Danny Elfman that is an alien movie, and it's a throwback to 1950s sci-fi, complete with the theremin reference. It is in the exact same ballpark. And I'm not saying Danny Elfman made the exact same score twice. They're distinct. They have their own themes, but they're coming from the exact same place, and they come out one after another. He had to have worked with them on both projects within a span of 12 months.
Yeah. That's wild to think about. Now, just to be clear, folks, I know the finale of Independence Day does not involve yodeling. It was a joke. We're all moving on.
People were so mad at you for that comment, Andy.
They were. I'm making everybody mad. This episode is pissing off everyone.
Scottish Independence Day fans are going to come at you so hard.
I'm done for. But yeah, I'm just glad this movie's out there, man. I love it. It's weird, it's insane, but I won't say it's quite as much as how I feel about David Lynch, but it's in a similar vein of just you know what? Maybe it didn't work for everyone, and maybe I don't always get it, but I'm glad it's out there.
Andrew, not to pat ourselves on the back too hard or anything, but Mars as a topic for a month is one of my favorites that we've done. Not even, I'm excited about the movies we can talk about, but I love just connecting them all through I don't even know which one of us pitched it, but it was there's oddly, I think there's enough movies here. Even without John Carter, which we covered during books, I think there's enough movies on Mars that were poorly received that we can talk about.
Beautiful. I'm happy.
Next week is going to be the one movie we're covering this month that does not have Mars in the title. It is called Red Planet. A movie that, as of right now, I don't think I've seen. I remember it coming out because I remember its close proximity to another movie about Mars. But I don't think this is one that I ever actually got around to. It kind of had a lukewarm reception, but you know what? I bet there's some stuff worth praising in there.
It does have the greatest actor of all time in it, so.
Val Kilmer, to be clear on which greatest actor of all time you're talking about. Yes.
I think Carrie-Anne Moss is in it too, to be fair. So, two goats.
She's wonderful, yeah. A cast this good. How can they go wrong? We're going to be talking about it next week. But for now, it's time for the question of the week. If you want to ask us a question for a future episode, you can do just that. Head on over to our Discord server. If you're not there already, there's a link in our show notes. So what are you waiting for? Click on that link. Join the community. Hang out with everybody that listens to this podcast. Talk about fun, nerdy stuff, and leave questions like Oculus Neko did here. They say, if you are stuck in an elevator for 6 hours with any actor or actress, with whom would you wish to be stuck with to A, help you try and escape by using their improvisational skills, and B, help you keep the mood light and make you laugh? All right, 6 hours. Actors or actresses. We can have more than one. Interesting. 6 hours in an elevator with actors or actresses. Who's helping you escape? Who's keeping the mood light? Andrew, who's springing to mind?
Michael Keaton's springing to mind because I just
and
know
that
I
be
would have
for
Yes.
improvisational skills or for laughing skills.
Yes. The man is Batman, so he's clearly got some tricks up his sleeve. But ultimately, I just know I would have no issue talking to Michael Keaton for 6 hours. Like, I would have absolutely no issue, like, just asking.
You
him
would have no
endless
issue with
questions.
it. I don't know how
He
Michael
probably
Keaton would
would.
feel about it. But
But yeah, I would definitely. Yeah, I'm just using this as a backdoor way to be like, who can I talk to for 6 hours?
Trapped in a box, 6 hours? 6 hours of talk time. That worked? That was a bone saw. 3 hours of playtime?
I got there. I
got
there.
I think it might have been a bridge too far, but I appreciate it.
I got there.
It also
I
wasn't a
knew
very
what
good
it was.
Macho Man. I usually do a better
No,
Macho
that
Man.
was-
I'm a little. I got you. Got you
No.
for 3 minutes. Oh man. Oh, Andrew, I'm embarrassed.
Got you for 3 minutes. Paint time.
Ooh yeah. That was a little better.
It's a little.
It was a,
Better.
it was a little better.
It's a little
Ah,
better.
God.
Yes,
I'll come
it
back to
works,
this.
too.
Don't worry, everybody. I will come back to my Macho Man impression. 6 hours. All right. So, hanging out with, keeping the mood light. First one that comes to mind to me is Will Forte, who I think is like the funniest person walking the planet. Love everything that they're in, even if the thing they're in isn't great. They're always great in it. They could, I swear, read the back of a shampoo bottle and make me laugh. Would love to hang out with Will Forte and talk about how The Last Man on Earth should have ended. Canceled way too soon. Great show. I've got some ideas, Will. You're going to love to. Again, I would be able to talk to him for 6 hours. Would he be into it? I don't know. But what's he going to do? Michael Keaton's pretty good, but Michael Keaton, for whatever reason, this is probably true of anybody we're going to name. I feel like, yeah, keep the mood light. He's really funny, but he would be like pissed off. He's in a bad mood. He's stuck in an elevator with a big fan of his. It's probably not a dream scenario. So what if they're just grouchy the whole time? And totally ruin
And in
this?
that case, I use my improvisational skills to get us out of the elevator, and then now he's thankful for my help.
There you go. You've got it all worked out, Andrew. So you could escape an elevator. This does 6 hours. I feel like I could get out in under 6 hours. Me by myself.
I've worked in elevators before. I know what the deal is.
Yeah, and I've seen movies. You just open the hatch at the
and
top.
you climb out.
Shimmy up the cable. It's just like climbing a rope in gym class. And somewhere up there's like an escape hatch or something.
Yeah.
Right? It's that easy.
Yeah.
I honestly have no idea what to do with stuck in an elevator. I think you just wait, right?
Usually,
I think
yes.
it's like a help button or whatever.
Yes, there are emergency call buttons in all elevators. It's part of their regular inspections to make sure that they call out appropriately.
Okay, so we're just killing time. We're just hanging out for 6 hours. All right, Michael Keaton, that's a good one. Paul Rudd. Who doesn't love Paul Rudd? Good one to hang out with.
I bet Jon Favreau would be a good one. Like Jon Favreau, just to talk about all that he's done, all that he is doing.
Jake Gyllenhaal, another greatest actor of all time. Dude has like the goofiest personality anytime you see him in like actual like interviews and stuff. Andrew, like many people in high school, I was a big fan of the movie Donnie Darko. And I watched that movie with commentary. I think it was director Richard E. Kelly and Jake Gyllenhaal. And there's one point in that commentary, I'm not going to do it justice. So if you got the time, go listen to the commentary. Jake Gyllenhaal's talking about, he's like, they start cracking up about some kind of like inside joke they had on set. And Richard Kelly's like, do it. And he starts saying, Jake Gyllenhaal says, my teeth itch over and over again and more manically. So it's like, my teeth itch, my teeth itch, my teeth itch, my teeth itch. And this is, again, professional actor Jake Gyllenhaal in the middle of this commentary. And I'm just like, what is this? A joke that none of us listening are going to understand. You sound insane. And I would love to spend 6 hours with you on an elevator.
That reminds me of that interview I sent you from Life. The one I talked about last week,
100%.
the week before, where the clip of them reacting to that question is one thing, but the entire 2.5 minute build to them being asked the question is even more ridiculous.
Because they can't settle down to hear the question.
They can't settle down. They keep making dumb jokes. They're talking about getting blow darted by their PR agents and passing out in the middle of sentences. And Ryan Reynolds does one where he's like, my life is a sham, right before he passes out. And Jake Gyllenhaal looks like he's going to die from laughter. They're just literally and then you remember that both of them easily got 7 figures to be in that movie. And you're just kind of oh, my life will never be this fun.
Of course.
My life is a sham. No.
But if I really wanted to focus on someone that could help me get out, I think Keanu Reeves would be handy. I feel like he just knows stuff. I feel like he spends his time in between movies or researching roles, learning about real life skills.
Has he ever played in? He did fix a time traveling phone booth once. So
in real life,
yeah. Harrison Ford used to be a carpenter. Maybe I'll ask him. Maybe he can. He would just sit there, be pissed off the whole time, and I would be all right,
wood.
Guide me through this, Harrison Ford. Now, there's this. There was an interview somebody did on the Indiana Jones 5 press tour where they interviewed him, but they asked him about a fence they were building at their house because they're like, he used to be a carpenter. He won't see this question coming. And they were like, I hear you used to be a carpenter. He's like, yeah. And they show him this fence. He's like, I'm going to have this fence built in my house. And I was just curious, do I have to attach both posts or do I need one in the middle? Harrison Ford looks at it and he's like, you just need a post on either end. There's not one in the middle. And he's like, oh, so that just bolts together. And Harrison Ford's like, you can do it that way. I wish you would. It's just such a weird, a weird aside where then at the end, he's like, and if you have anything to ask us about the movie, come back and ask that. And the guy thought he was so clever. But if you watch the clip, all of his buddies that were talking to him were just like, no, he hated that question. What are you talking about?
Oh, that's the worst. Okay, so the clip with Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds that you sent me from Life, that was an interviewer going I'm going to throw him a curveball, and they were totally on board with it. And right. It's a real gamble because, I bet on these press stories, they get sick of the same 10 questions over and over again. But, you throw them something wacky, and it's almost to use wrestling terms, you're trying to get yourself over, and they could react oh, this is not about you, kid, So it's interesting. And Harrison Ford isn't one I'll take the gamble on. I'll just ask him the standard questions, get his standard answers, and move on. But
there's a time and place. There's a time and place for
thinking about them being crafty. Woodsman does make me think of Nick Offerman. Would be a good person for both of them. Obviously, very handy, good with his hands, skilled carpenter, etc. And also a very funny human being. So I think that's pretty.
Henry Cavill in that regard too. He loves building his PCs and stuff. I'm sure that man could rip his way out of an elevator.
And if we everybody we named, let's put them all in there. We could form a human chain, and we can all get out of there.
At that point, we're gonna have too many people in the elevator. We're gonna surpass its weight limit, and it's gonna jettison to the bottom of the shaft anyway. So we're getting out of this one way or the other.
There you go. You know who I would not want? Emilio Estevez.
No,
this is a Mission Impossible reference.
Yes, I understood that.
Yeah.
Get us out
any of those people, any combination of those people. Andrew, what does it say about us? So we picked a bunch of dudes. Is that good? Is that bad?
Best not to dwell on it.
I'll tell you. I'll give you a totally honest reason. If I feel like if I picked a woman, I would feel like I worry about coming across as a creep. And that's why I don't. I'm going to leave it at that. That's the only reason I don't.
They deal with enough already.
They don't need to deal with me. So I got to put them through that. Who
Get
do
us
you want
outta
to be
here.
stuck in an elevator
Chris,
with?
you're gonna get us. You're gonna get people mad at you at this rate. Get us out of here.
Would love to hear the people you want to be stuck in an elevator with. Who's helpful? Who's entertaining? I don't know. What's your best answer? Let us know. Hit us up in that Discord that I already talked about. The link, it's still there in the show notes. Go click on it. Find us. Answer. And yeah, we're getting out of here. We'll be back next week with another Mars movie, Red Planet. And until then, just remember that maybe not every movie is great.
But all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. You can check him out on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. And thanks to Mitch for our music. You can follow him on Twitter at I'm a Biggie Boy. And check our show notes for the SoundCloud link. Check out our store on TeePublic for some Best of the Rest merch. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. It's the only way that we grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you.
Ack, ack.